Okay, this is JR, and I'm talking with Shelly and Daniel, and also Vanessa, and we're going to review the 8 stages of perfectionism, including a few stages of hell and a few stages of heaven. And then a final stage outside of the stage of perfectionism, or the stages of perfectionism, which we could call perfection. So first, let's talk about what perfectionism means. Who's going to go first? Oh, Daniel, you volunteered? Okay. Daniel, tell us some idea of what this word perfectionism means to you. It can be short, but what does it mean to you? Example or just a straight definition? Go ahead.
I think having a predetermined or preconceived ideas of what is going to bring salvation, or what's going to bring peace, or a certain sense of joy. If we have certain ideas that we need to come, to manifest, that is perfectionism.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Well, I'm just asking for your definition, right, or your association with that word. So you did bring up one word that's I'm going to ask you to say more about, which is salvation. So I understand peace. I understand most of what you said, and so would anybody else. But what do you mean by perfectionism in terms of how it relates to salvation?
Well, if we feel as though certain things have to change, which in perfectionism, it's all about what needs to change, then we attach the word salvation.
Daniel, your audio dropped for a moment, so back up and say that last sentence again, please.
Just to say that, if we're talking about perfectionism, we're talking about certain mental conditions that we need to happen to find salvation, or to be content with life, to be completely aware in a moment.
Okay. Completely aware in a moment. I'm repeating that because your audio dropped again. To be completely aware in a moment. Go on.
Right. Just to say that, we certainly we have a feeling of discontentment about whatever.
Okay, your audio is really chopping in and out. A feeling of discontentment about our life, about whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
And just saying that has something to do with the idea that I'm going to need this to change, or that to change, or this to be better, whatever. And that has all to do with the label of salvation.
That has all to do with the label of salvation. Okay?
Do I need to, do you want to call me back or something, maybe?
I was thinking I could actually call you on a land. Well, no, I can't probably call you on a landline. I don't know if that'll work. But, well, yeah, you can hang up and call me right back if you want. That's fine.
Well, you can call me on a landline if you want.
Oh, we can? Okay. All right. Daniel, why don't you type in your phone number so I can call you in a minute, and then Shelly, go ahead and give us your answer.
For me, I associate perfectionism with just finding it extremely difficult to be wrong. Editing your answer to the person that you're responding to, or the situation that you're responding to, in a way that you think is perfect or the right way, or just a very difficult time being wrong is how I associate perfectionism.
Okay, so there's a particular idea of what would be right or perfect, and then also concern for being wrong or doing something the wrong way, even doing the wrong thing. Whatever might be the wrong thing, there's a concern for that.
Right.
And there's a particular kind of concern and a particular way that people are concerned about these things. So just as a little technical moment, I'm going to call Daniel and put you on speaker, and then you can, so we don't feed back, Daniel, be ready to, even go ahead and mute yourself or be ready to hang up. So perfectionism implies a specific. Oops. Okay, so you can hear me now. Daniel, just for testing, say something real quick.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, Shelly, can you hear him okay?
Hello? Yeah, Shelly, can you hear me?
I might have just messed up my call with Shelly. So we'll come back to perfectionism in a moment. So on the subject of doing things perfectly, well, how do we interact with, errors, with breakdowns, with unexpected things? So there's a phone call, and the phone call, it doesn't go how I planned. It's not perfect because, one thing was choppy. So now, Shelly, we're experimenting with doing things imperfectly here, hypothetically, with this phone call, by the way, and the Skype call. So, Daniel, I just wanted you to be able to talk and I think you can hear Shelly okay. You just heard her say hello, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Shelly, you could hear Daniel say yes? Shelly, did you hear Daniel say yes?
Yes, I can. Very faintly. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I did,
let's see
but
if I
you're
can.
cutting in and out.
Oh, fantastic. Or not. Okay, I'm cutting in and out. Well, I don't have any signal issues showing up, so I'm going to continue, but type to me a message, Shelly. If I need to call you again or, put you on a phone line or something, we'll do that. Whatever we need to do. Okay, so we have this ideal of, or someone has an ideal of what's the perfect way for things to go, or the expected way for things to go, the hoped way for things to go, ideal, perfect, right, good, all that kind of stuff. So perfectionism is an anxious relation to ideals. Okay? So it's not that there are no ideals. Oh, just a second. Daniel, just give me a moment. Test and then make sure I can hear you. Say that again.
What I said was that I talked about how it's about preconceived ideas of how things should be. It's the same thing as saying ideals, right? I mean, it's the same principle, really.
It's the exact same principle. I'm adding the element of personal anxiety. So I can have ideals. I can say, here's how things should be. If there's an element of anxiety in it, then it's idealism and perfectionism. If it's just an ideal of ideally, I eat the following things, and everybody I know eats these things because these are the best things to eat. As far as I know, I presume that these are really good unless I get other information. This is my ideal plan for how to eat or how to exercise or how my job's going to go or whatever. I can have ideals, but I don't have to have a relationship with those ideals of fundamental anxiety.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay? I don't have to define the world as fundamentally imperfect. I don't have to define myself as fundamentally imperfect because I've got 23 qualities, 7 of which are qualities that I shouldn't ever have had, and that I'm ashamed of, and that I'm anxious to hide. That would be perfectionism. I'm actually suggesting there is a more mature or more developed alternative. Okay, so comments or questions at this stage? Okay, so, wow. That was loud. Okay, so I don't know why we have that going on, because, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, hopefully we'll have minimal, weird little technical issues here. But it is interesting. We've never had these issues before. It is interesting.
No, I'm
Huh?
doing it on purpose, but
Oh.
no, I don't know what Skype on my phone. I don't.
You need to turn off the Skype.
Phones on the speakerphone next to each other, and there's
Yeah.
these cordless phones. They make weird noises. You hear those?
I heard some, feedback.
Yeah.
So those are just like little technical flaws. Those are little, issues. We try and resolve little issues. That's really not a big deal, really. I want to get back to the 8 stages of perfectionism, and ultimately we'll talk about perfection or the perfect ones, this 9th stage outside of that realm. Within the 8 stages of perfectionism, there's the stages of heaven, by which I mean people would say, no, this is how it should be, everything's good. Even if I'm relating to life out of anxiety, they have a conversation around this is how everybody should be. How I am is how other people should be. And that's a really big part of their conversation. And they don't really have a surface experience of agonizing or misery. They're just anxious, but the anxiety is in the background relatively, so they would call it heaven in that sense, or a kind of heaven. Is that clear?
Yes.
And then the next 3 stages that I'm calling stages of hell, that's where people are saying, look, this world sucks. It's imperfect. I need to fix it to make it how it should be. Which is distinct from people who are more, you could say immature, who are more ignorant of the world. They don't necessarily say politicians shouldn't be so corrupt. They would say politicians shouldn't be corrupt and politicians are not corrupt. I like all the politicians that I'm familiar with. George Washington, Hillary Clinton, John McClane. Those are all wonderful people, to the best of my knowledge, in history class and on that one TV show I saw about them. They seem like they're just awesome. So somebody in that realm of heaven has ideals, but they don't necessarily recognize major incongruence between their ideals and reality. Okay?
Ignorance is bliss.
What's that? Ignorance is bliss. Yes, exactly. With the added element of this particular kind of idealism or perfectionism in the background, right? So it's more like ignorance is numb, or blind. So
Yeah.
the skeptic, the cynic, the critic, that's getting into, we need to change the world, we need to reform the world, or I wish the world was so much different than it is, and especially those politicians, or especially my family member, that one family, that one family member, how do we reform them, and that kind of thing. And then there are other stages. I'm calling the next 2 stages purgatory, and then that final stage. So now let's go ahead and get into the first 3 stages, unless anybody has a question or comment here. Anybody?
Sometimes I see people posting on Facebook, and they can be so simple, so negative. You know what I'm talking about, these people?
I have seen other people, posting cynical and negative things. I have seen that, yeah. What about it?
It just so bothers me.
It doesn't,
That's all I have to say about the first 3 stages.
Okay. That's actually the second 3, but close enough. Oops.
I don't know any first 3 because I'm still stuck in the second 3. There we go. Ironic.
That is ironic. Everything you said is ironic. Daniel was already in the mode of the comic and actually being lighthearted and even a satire of the comic. Or were you? I don't know. Maybe you weren't satiring the comic, but I know you were totally joking with what you said. So and it was quite relaxed. So Shelley, any comment? You said no. Anything further? Nope. Okay.
Nothing.
Okay. So, the champion! So, what I mean by champion is think about in particular a young person. They learned to walk. They didn't know how to walk, and then they learned to walk. And they are the champion of walking. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome, I can walk, right? And they're totally engaged. They're not really we could even assert that first heaven isn't even perfectionism. It's not even in the realm of perfectionism. They're just totally in that accomplishment stage. They're a champion of walking, or they learn to talk, or they learn to ride a bicycle, or they learn spelling bee words, or they learn how to spell, and they're just in that mode of victory. For some people, they actually have that experience quite a long time in their life. They without tremendous challenges, they can be the spotlight and the leader of their peer group. They can get a lot of attention and a lot of success simply out of doing what comes natural to them.
Okay, but they also can be naive in that. Naivety comes with it.
Do you want to talk more about what you mean? Do you want to say more about what you mean by naivety?
Oh, just to say that, I mean, if you're the champion, if everything's going your way, you can be naive in how to deal with the storm, if the storm ever comes.
Right.
Maybe they'll just be champions forever, and that's great, but if the storm comes to them eventually, they would be very, naive in how to handle it.
So,
you understand what I mean by that terminology? I'm using your terminology.
Yeah, I understand. I'm asking you to give some background terminology for other listeners. I expect Shelley to know what you meant too, but since we're recording.
Just to say that, I mean, if they haven't had to, if we're a champion and we haven't had to deal with being one of the other stages, then if that ever should happen to a champion, but I'm not saying even a negative thing. I mean, that's how it works. But they haven't had to deal with the other stages that you have mentioned, is what I'm trying to say, and they're naive in how to deal with it. There's no depth there. Which I would rather be a champion. I don't want to be one of the losers that I am. The cynics or those losers.
Well, that's the kind of thing that people will say at some point. Is I wish I was still a champion. However, that is an odd thing to say. I mean, I wish I was still a champion. It's kind of odd. I mean, not that it's uncommon, but it's just kind of odd.
It was just a joke.
Oh, what was a good joke? Oh, you wish you were still a champion. No, but people.
If I didn't have to go through the hell of cynicism or the comic or whatever the three, I don't remember now, but I would rather not go through them. But I'm not sure if that's a choice.
Right. We may not have that option of going back, and wishing to go back doesn't necessarily make any difference. So the champion is a stage in which we have natural success. I was going to give a couple examples of people who have stayed in that range of champion through relatively long periods of their life, later into their teenage years and their adulthood and so on. They maintain just tremendous success and excel without ever running into a lot of struggles, or without running into a lot of struggles until they're quite a bit older. Okay, good. We got Shelley back. Hopefully you can hear me better.
Yeah, no cutting out so far.
Cool. So I was going to give some examples of champions in regard to some different fields of endeavor. Maybe you guys will give me a couple other examples. I'll actually just ask you first. What do you think of, obviously the word champion is associated with what field of activity? Nobody has an answer. So if I say somebody won the championship, what am I talking about usually? What kind of activity?
Competitiveness.
Yeah, but more specific, what kind of activity do we have champions and championships? What's the most common activity with champions and championships? Sports. So in the realm of sports, you can have someone be a champion tennis player. So at age of 16, they're well ranked, and at age of 19, they have a lot of attention and they're winning their first Wimbledon or something like that. They're doing very well. And then at age 28, they're still a champion. And then at age 35, they're, starting to do sportscaster, commentaries. And at age 42, they're not even playing anymore, maybe. So, in that case, they're still a champion at age 42, hypothetically. Because if they walk right into being the sports commentator and they still have like huge popularity and huge economic success based on their athletic performance and earlier in their life, then they're still a champion in my sense of using the word champion. Another example would be music. I think a lot of entertainment, I think of sports as an entertainment industry, but another really big part of the modern entertainment industry is musicians and music and singers, vocalists in particular. So anybody that you think of as like super popular and has been super popular for a long time, especially if they have been popular since the beginning of their career, like even if they were, by the time they were a teenager, they were already one of the leading artists in, around, then they are a champion. They're riding a wave of championship, being just... What's that?
Paul McCartney is a good example of that. I mean,
well,
other ones too, but
definitely in terms of he started young, and once he got popular, his popularity has maintained, and he's been very successful with it. But he actually had 8 or 10 years before, in Germany and in Liverpool, before the Beatles had much success. There was a lot of, they played in a lot of small and low-class venues. So he became a super example of a champion. But actors and actresses could also be, whether they start as a child or not, they can be so popular and so loved that they would be what I'm calling a champion. Who's an example of somebody who from their youth has been very successful as an actor or as a musician or performer? Who do you think of?
Drew Barrymore.
Okay. Who else?
Madonna.
Uh-huh.
James.
Who did you say, Daniel?
James, very successful.
Say the name again? Jenna Jameson. Okay. I think of Justin Bieber.
Do you guys know who?
What?
You guys know who she is?
Yeah, I do, but I'm not going to comment on that. I know exactly who she is.
Sorry.
That's fine. No, I mean that's fine. It fits, but I'm not gonna go into that reference. But back to popular musicians that a lot of people would know. Justin Bieber from childhood. All of the Disney kids. Justin Timberlake was a Disney kid. Who?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson was actually the example I gave of like the first child musician star that I know who had enduring success. Of course, he's a very unusual case. But Justin Timberlake actually went into movies, and he's reasonably good. Who else? Will Smith went from being a rapper to TV to movies, and most people don't know he was ever a rapper, but that was his original, fame, how he got to be famous. And
Parents just don't understand, and yes, I think he's a very good actor. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a well-known actor. Other child stars. Who are some of the lady child stars? So Miley Cyrus. I can't remember the lady's name, but she was really huge, like the same era as Justin Timberlake, and she kissed Madonna on the Video Music Awards show. Britney Spears. And then there's been other child stars. I think Lindsay Lohan was very successful very early. So there's been a variety of people who, through American Idol or through involvement with the Mickey Mouse Club and Disney and all that, from a very young age, without ever really having to do what Paul McCartney did and have to play, low-class dive bars and do it for a long time before he and his group, the Beatles, became successful. A lot of folks just glide ice skaters, youth athletes, young people that, they excel from a very early age. Some of the tennis players, and I think maybe even that guy Tiger Woods, the golfer. I think he was really quite successful from a young age.
Yeah, but you know what the irony is? You're using idealism to define who the champions are. If the champions, is that idealism? Because, I mean, how do you define what a champion is unless you put a label on it?
Okay.
This is what a champion is. You have to do this, 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 and this, and then you're a champion. It sounds like idealism, JR. It sounds kind of hypocritical. Maybe?
Okay.
Something?
I don't really want to respond to that particular issue right now. I just am trying to give examples of champion, and then we can talk about what it means more in terms of the everyday person's experience of it. So you're getting into, the everyday person's experience. I'm just giving some general examples of people who have stayed in the champion's cage for much longer than the average person. So it's a little unusual, but that was what I had in mind at this point.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
So maybe you can bring that up again later, or maybe we can go into it, but I'm not sure how to transition into it.
No, that's fine. All right. Talk about more champions.
Well, so we've got an idea of some of these champions in terms of people who are very successful and who glide gracefully into tremendous success. And I'm picking,
the cast from Jersey Shore.
Okay, so I'm picking some examples that I think people will be familiar with, but it could be somebody who, in my case, I was pretty successful academically. I went right into college, and some people go right from college into the workforce, and they're very successful without ever running into a whole lot of struggle. Maybe in their early youth there was some struggle, but they may have a lot of success relative to the average person. They may be gliding through life and quite successfully. So I want to acknowledge that, and I also want to say everybody generally has some element of that, but sooner than the examples we've been giving, into their teenage years or whatever time frame, people are no longer experiencing themselves as gliding through life easily. They're encountering challenges. So that's the kind of contrast I wanted to set up to start. So comments or questions on that?
It makes perfect sense in how you can fall into the three levels of hell that the contrast are setting up, whereas these people wouldn't have no knowledge of that, or, which is a good thing, or whatever, it's a thing. I see the contrast.
Okay.
Appreciate it now.
Okay, and Shelley?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So the champion is gliding through easily, and in many cases, like when, Shelley, as a mother of your kids are champions. That's like how you relate to them, is they're champions. They're in that stage. If I recall correctly, both of them are at the ages where that's really big for them, but then they start probably getting into being fans of things, right?
Right.
So you don't have to answer this, but at the same time as they're still experiencing things as a champion, they're experiencing our team came in first in the 6-year-old division for volleyball. We played a tournament and we won. Oh, it was so awesome! Did you see the one time that I touched the ball? Right?
Right.
That mode of enthusiasm and so on, including, you can say it includes an element of naivety, but that I'm talking about a targeting of being the champion and staying the champion. It doesn't just mean that somebody's gliding through successfully. It's also when they're really like, I'm going to be champion. I'm going to win. And there's a distinction between the person who's trying to be champion or who is easily experiencing a lot of success, and then other people who are no longer things aren't going quite so smoothly for them. Okay?
Yeah, the optimism.
Including the optimism, but they're realizing that, you know what, I'm not that good a skater. I'm not that good at drawing. I'm not that good at music. I'm not that good at basketball or whatever. And they start to sense, maybe they're going to shift from being focused on remaining the champion or being the champion, or maybe they get into some other sport and they're, they have dreams of being a professional athlete in skiing or in skateboarding or in or they want to be a professional musician or something. So they still have that gearing towards being a champion, but not in the same issues where that really little kid, everything is a championship kind of endeavor for a really small kid. When they do something, they're out to, be champion. Their enthusiasm level is all or none, hypothetically. I might be oversimplifying, but that's the point to make this reasonably short. Okay?
Okay.
So give me an example, Shelley, if you think of anything. What's something where, you can even say reference to champion stuff, but I'm really getting interested now in the fan thing. What did they get to be like something that they were involved in, but then maybe they got to be a fan of, more so than being involved? Anything?
My son is a huge fan of basketball now.
Okay. So he's a fan, and is he active? Is he thinking, I want to be an NBA star one day?
Yep.
Okay. So he's got a champion mindset, and he's a fan. So he can name his favorite team and his favorite player and stuff like that, right?
I wouldn't say team, but definitely players.
Okay. So he has some favorite players. He doesn't have a favorite team. Okay. Well, that'll come. That'll come.
Yes. Yeah, it's getting there, but he's not patient enough to sit through a whole game yet. But.
All right. Cool. All right. So, Daniel, do you want to comment on anything, the direction I'm going at this point?
Right, just as my son, he has interest in a guitar.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and I was interested in playing the keyboard.
Yeah.
He likes to play it, and you're right. He wants to tackle it, and I can see his enthusiasm. So in that way, and he plays basketball too as well. But yeah, I see enthusiasm that he may have towards something, and then I contrast that with the enthusiasm that I might take towards something. And yeah, it's quite a contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it could be. So there's a difference between the 15-year-old who plays basketball for fun and the 7-year-old or whatever age who's fantasizing about being in the NBA, and that's their real experience. I'm practicing for the NBA. I'm 7, and I'm practicing for the NBA.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So the fan...
He definitely still approaches it with enthusiasm. He might not blow himself up to the NBA at 15.
Right.
Where a 7-year-old would, but he definitely still has a lot more enthusiasm than maybe a 38-year-old might. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Follow me?
Well, he's playing for fun as a fan of the game, I would assume. I don't know. Maybe some 15-year-olds are going to get to the NBA, but most of them aren't.
No, not. And I don't think my son thinks in those terms.
Right. He probably...
high school team, and he'd be perfectly happy,
Right. So he's got he's got a different focus. So he may have an orientation towards, I want to be a champion or excel in a particular area, and that's fine. So the fan of Madonna or the fan of Will Smith or the fan of who else did we mention? The Beatles. They know a bunch of songs. They actually they congregate with other fans, other basketball fans. They'll like them. For a 7-year-old boy who meets another 7-year-old boy who is also a basketball fan, you know what that is? That is a person that I like.
Heaven.
It's that fast. What? What'd you say, Daniel?
I said heaven.
It's heaven. All right. Yeah, they're in heaven. Bam. Right. Back to the heaven reference. So, so they're experiencing, thrill. So we could say they are thrilled just to be a fan of basketball. Or somebody is thrilled to, go out and win, and they're really competitive and successful. They're in the more champion mode. Or I sold this many albums, and this, I was the, Justin Bieber broke a record, and then he broke Justin Timberlake's record, and Justin Timberlake broke Michael Jackson's record. And, we have all these record breakers, right? So each of them were champions in their own time, or at a particular point in time, as far as I know. So what is something else that one of your sons is a fan of outside of sports, Shelley? Which superheroes? Which TV shows?
How did I not think of that? They're obsessed with all the superheroes.
All of them? Okay, fair enough.
Spider-Man. I would say Spider-Man is their favorite.
Well, Batman.
Batman is a little dark for them. I think they're more into the fun-loving Spider-Man character.
Yeah, okay.
At this age, anyway. Yeah. We'll see how that changes.
Yeah, and Spider-Man in our day, I meant to say Batman in our day was not a dark character. He had the cartoon, he had the TV show, which was relatively light. Now the Batman movies are super dark, right? Some of them. So,
the new one,
So, they're not targeting 4-year-olds or 7-year-olds or whatever. But Spider-Man might be targeting 7-year-olds, and certainly 4-year-olds wear the pajamas and, practice shooting spider webs and stuff. I certainly did, and I assume your kids do too. I think I've even seen some of their Spider-Man outfits, right?
Yeah. They've got a lot.
Yeah, and in the 50s, we might not have had Spider-Man pajamas, 1950s, but there were fans of Spider-Man, and a lot of them were young, whether they were 20 or 7 or whatever. 50 or in the 1950s, little kids might have been. I don't remember for sure, but there was Dudley Diddley, some little puppet was on TV. I don't remember the name of it. Do you guys know what I'm trying to remember? Anyway, I don't know the TV shows for kids in the 1950s, but you had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was big by the 80s for little kids. Transformers, I think, was big. Prior to that, you had Hanna-Barbera, and I'm not remembering the names of all these shows, but like
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry. So I was a fan of Tom and Jerry. I was a fan of Speedy Gonzales. Go ahead, Daniel.
Flintstones.
The Flintstones, right. So they were really popular. They were that was, I think, the first cartoon that had a decent chunk of adult audience, like way before The Simpsons. It was on prime time.
I still watch it to this day. It's hilarious.
Well, my point is, it wasn't just a Saturday morning kind of show for kids. It was, but it was also, if I recall right, I could be wrong, but I believe it was one of the first successful cartoons that actually were in prime time. Whenever it first came out, I guess. But so we're real clear. We've been fans of stuff. We were champions in something, or we had a mode of being, a hopeful champion. So we had a mode of that champion stage where we're in heaven just to be in the tournament, and I really want to win. But I say, just to be in this tournament, I'm so happy, but, I really want to win. And then another time I'm a fan, I'm having fun, but, I'm having fun, and I'm a big fan. I watched the Mutant Ninja Turtles. Somebody else is a fan of Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, that's awesome. Now, fast forward 4 years. What?
Sounds like a cheerleader, I think somebody knows that role pretty well. Cheerleader. Fan, cheerleader.
Yeah, okay, right. A cheerleader is an example of a fan. Hopefully, right, we hope that the cheerleaders are actually fans of the thing if they're like a professional cheerleader. But, so, if I'm a big fan of the Flintstones in 1976, okay, when I'm 5 years old, I'm a big fan. Oh my God, I love the Flintstones. Oh, the little kid, Bam Bam. He's just like my little nephew. I so relate to him and all that stuff. And I have his T-shirt and I have his underwear and his. I know that sounds weird. And I have his pajamas and I have a lock of his hair. Oh my God, it's Justin Bieber. Oh my God, did you see it was? I have a poster of whatever. I'm the fan of all these things. I'm picking on the Flintstones though. So I'm 5 years old. I'm a big fan of the Flintstones. Or my nephews, they were a big fan of Barney at age 5. Let's say they're a fan of Barney. Actually, by age 5, I don't know that they were fans of Barney. But let's go forward a few years. They have been fans of something. A few years later, are they fans of the same thing?
No, they're flowing.
Maybe not. Maybe they moved on to some other thing, right? They're flowing. Is that what you said, Daniel? Flowing?
Yes, they're flowing, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Shelley?
No, usually they've outgrown it.
Right. So they're a fan of something especially little kids, things that are targeted for little kids, soon I say, no, I'm a big boy. I'm not into Barney. I'm a big boy, or whatever the kids say. So, or that's for girls. Oh, I liked Dora when I was 3, but that's for girls. I'm a boy. No, I don't like her. You know who I like? Wolverine. Yeah, he's macho. I like him. So I go from being a fan to lots of things to no longer being a fan of certain things, and I may shift into being a fanatic. And I'm really into maybe just one thing. I'm not a fan of all kinds of sports, and I like these cartoons, and I like those musicians. I start to get really focused, and maybe I'm a fanatic in regard to a few different things, but it gets more specific. I want to set myself further apart from my peers, right? Everybody that's a 7-year-old boy, pretty much, lots of them like basketball, lots of them like Spider-Man. As they get to be 9, liking basketball or liking Spider-Man, it's not as distinctive. So typically, they get more focused into something specific, right? Maybe they get a favorite team. They're not just a fan of the sport. Now they're a fanatic for their favorite team, okay? So what do you guys, any things that you guys think of from your own life or from people you've observed? Simple example of a
fanatic for our favorite language, don't we?
Okay.
Yeah, we do. No, as we become adults, I mean, we have our favorite perspective, our favorite patterns of language. We have our favorites, don't we? I think we grow into that, and that is part of paranoia.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I wanna come back to that. Let me see if we can get some more like just generic examples of fanatic, and then we can go ahead and jump into where Daniel's going as far as fanaticism and even fundamentalism. But just like the simple term fanatic, somebody he would even say, "Yeah, I'm a fanatic. I love this team." So an example, or I love that blank, right? That artist. What's an example of like some kind of fanatic level that you think of, Shelley?
You mean like what would they do, or what?
No, just in a case of fanaticism, like that people can a really basic level, not even fanaticism, just somebody's a fanatic about their favorite blank. Like what? What would be an example?
Definitely favorite football team in this town.
Okay, in Tallahassee, Florida, you are going to be a fanatic, and you might even like FAMU and FSU. But most everybody's going to like FSU, almost,
right.
Guaranteed. And some people are probably going to really like FAMU, and probably also FSU. And right. Then, but they may specify, get one more than the other, right? They appreciate one, but they may be a real fanatic about one team or one sport. And when you said football team, right, Shelley?
Yes.
So, how many fanatics are there for FSU volleyball?
I would say not many.
There's 23. How many fanatics are there for? I counted. How many fanatics are there for FSU water polo?
I'm going to go with 13.
13. How many fanatics are there for FSU? Let's see. Basketball?
Oh, that's a little higher. 200.
200? I was going to go higher than that, but okay, 200. And they've been...
That's probably 400, come on. And they've had some success over the last couple of years,
Is that right, Shelley?
Did they do what? I missed it.
Did they have success over the last few years?
They have had a little success.
I didn't know that, so 200 is probably quite low then, huh? I remember when they first... It seemed to me that they were not super competitive in baseball and then started to get pretty... competitive. Like nationally, they got to be one of the best-ranked teams for a few years consistently in baseball.
The numbers have risen for sure because Jameis Winston plays on the baseball team as well.
All right. For those of you who don't know Jameis Winston, he is the god of all college athletes. And didn't he win the Heisman Trophy as a freshman?
He did?
Yeah, so that's pretty. He's a champion in that regard, and he probably will.
Crabs. I just want to say that.
He's God. Yeah.
I ate crabs, I said.
What? What did you say?
Crabs are bad, right?
Crabs are bad?
Jared, are you not familiar? He stole crabs from Publix.
Oh my gosh. But he's a champion. So what did he get? Probation?
Nothing. No.
Nothing.
He
Oh
got
my
nothing.
gosh. He got nothing. All right.
He did get arrested. But
So this is an interesting aside. So we got, the Fanatics. Of course, how many Fanatics for FSU football, Shelley? Approximately?
1 million.
Okay. So let's say a couple 100,000, maybe. Like not just in Tallahassee, but the alumni dispersed throughout the U.S. It's like a few 100,000 probably. I don't know about 1 million, maybe. I doubt it though. But so Jameson, or Jameis, however it's said, Justin Bieber, lots of stars, lots of champions end up drawing attention to themselves in a pretty unfavorable light, right? We could say, not that other people don't, but he doesn't need to steal crabs from Publix, right? Like, he could afford them, right? We would imagine he's fine as far as being able to afford crabs.
Well, he's a college student, but
I don't know.
he's not getting paid. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have expected him to steal it.
So I would expect if he said to, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hey guys, I want you guys to take me out to dinner twice a week, every week for the next 3 years. Are you guys up for that? That they might say, no problem. I don't know if that's legal or not, but I
don't think it is.
Probably not. But I would imagine that he has, if somebody said, could I get a credit card from you, or would your company give me a loan or whatever, that as a star athlete, he's a good credit risk. He's going to probably do well financially, even if he isn't yet.
Right.
So it's unlikely that he, quote unquote, needed to steal the crabs. Somebody else might steal the crabs for a totally different reason. He didn't steal them to resell them. It's not his way of making a living.
Right.
You take a case like Justin Bieber, and they may get really into cocaine. There's a lot of stars, in California, or maybe in New York too, but I know in California there's a lot of stars that spend huge amounts of money on drug addictions. And they're not necessarily happy people, but their public face and the association is that person's in heaven. If somebody else is talking about them, we say, oh, I would love to be a champion. I'd love to be like them. We don't necessarily know what the reality of their life is, but we like their poster on our wall and we're a big fan of theirs and so on. So there's a certain context that I'm presenting all this in regard to, how we view ourselves and how we view other people. So some of these champions will draw attention to themselves, and I'm imagining that Jameis might want the discipline and maybe he's testing. I don't know what's going on, but I think a lot of people find it uncomfortable to have tremendous success suddenly, and I've had that experience. It can be I don't know if disturbing is the right word, but it can be challenging and disorienting to go from not that successful to being a champion again or something like that. It is something to deal with for people who experience that. When they rise to stardom, they were a good musician or whatever, but once they win American Idol and then they go on tour, and then 4 years later they're in alcohol rehab and cocaine rehab, they might never come out of it, And they might, but they might not. So people can get into being fanatics about some of these light topics that I've mentioned: entertainment, music, my favorite actor, my favorite movie, my favorite author, my favorite book series, my favorite sports professional or athlete. So Daniel was bringing up fanaticism in regard to language. So we could also say the same kind of things in regard to religion politics. Daniel, do you have anything else you want to bring up as far as a kind of fanaticism?
Relationships.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to explain that in a moment. Also, people can be fanatic about a certain diet or a certain health practice. Shelley, do you have an example of just a really common type of fanaticism?
No.
Okay. Okay, Daniel, tell me more what you mean by a relationship.
Well, we can certainly feel more connected or more passionate about one relationship than the other relationship.
Okay.
And actually, if in any way they would be happening at the same time, it certainly can lead to a lot of problems.
If you have two primary relationships at once, it can lead to problems?
Yeah, the only problems really.
Okay.
At least anything that's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. The conflicted desire of two separate relationships at once. Never. I don't know. I shouldn't say never. In my limited experience, I mean, it probably will lead to fanaticism.
Okay.
Right?
So I'm going to come into that. So, I'm a fan of this one music group. Let's say I'm going to use the example of a girl. I'm not going to use me. So I'm going to use the example of a girl. There's a 12-year-old girl, and there's, this local band or a traveling band, maybe not nationwide stars, but, somebody from the Disney Channel or whatever. And they have, it's like, what's one of the boy bands? New Edition was a boy band, I guess, right? Backstreet Boys,
Years ago.
New Kids on the Block, NSYNC.
New Direction or something.
New Direction is one of the more recent ones. Okay.
One Direction.
One Direction.
Direction, yes.
So I'm a 12-year-old girl, or imagine a 12-year-old girl, and they're a fan of the entire group, right? But isn't it normal that they pick one or two of them that are their favorite member?
Yeah.
And this is not specific to girls by any chance, but by any means. But
Because guys do the same thing, yes.
so then the 12-year-old girl, or maybe she's 17, I don't know, but make up the situation. I like this example. As Daniel was talking, I thought, how can we connect this with what we were already saying? So she gets backstage, or she's at the book signing, right? Or the album signing, or whatever. The event where she has them sign her T-shirt or sign her album cover or CD case or whatever. And there they all are, four of them, and she talks to all of them. And after she talks to them, and, maybe if she's backstage, she's going to be interested in one of them more than the others, probably, right?
Yeah, that's how.
So that's a connection where she would be like, I would love for any of them to be my boyfriend. Oh my gosh, that would be so awesome if one of the New Kids on the Block was my boyfriend. Oh, I would be so happy, right? I would be in heaven, right?
Absolutely.
And then they can get focused on, oh, I got to get backstage. So they get backstage, or a couple of girls or young ladies get backstage. I don't know if this is when they're 17 or 12, but go with this example if you would.
38.
Okay, so they're back with the Backstreet Boys or the whatever. They're back in the at a party. Maybe they're in Hollywood. Maybe it's not the backstage. Whatever. But they're out and about, and there's all of their favorite band, and they have one favorite guy that they're really fanatical about, and they really want to have interaction with that person. They want that person to give them their phone number or ask them out on a date or whatever, right? So that connects back to Daniel's comment where you have an interest or a couple different interests that could be in conflict, and you pick one of them, and it's really normal in my experience, for a young person to be totally infatuated, totally like obsessed about a prospective partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Whether it's a star from a local band or a the Disney Mickey Mouse Club band or whatever, or just my favorite. I love these three people in high school or middle school. These are the three people I like, and then I've got the one that I'm obsessed about, and I'm talking to my friends, and oh, she smiled at me today, or oh, he wrote me a note. What did it say? It said, I don't know. I'm thinking of something that's silly and an overreaction for the girl to be reacting about it. But he wrote me a note, and it said, okay, I don't have anything. Gosh, this class is boring, don't you think? Right? And, maybe he wrote it while sitting next to her and, handed it to her or showed it to her or whatever, tilted his page over. But that doesn't necessarily indicate that he's interested in anything beyond, making that comment, right? So it can arise that people experience fanaticism now where they're like, I'm going to be in heaven if. And as long as I do this diet, then I'm going to recover from blah, 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 incurable disease or whatever, however people talk. As long as my favorite candidate wins, then I'm going to be in heaven. And I don't want those bad people to win. But if my favorite candidate wins and this really important thing passes, then the world won't have an apocalypse next Tuesday and it will be okay. We'll still be in heaven. But we've got to protect heaven now because we're on the edge of hell. But we're still in heaven, but we got to protect it, right? So that is a very different thing than the simplicity and ease and grace that I talked about for the champion. And also the, simplicity of a fan. A fan is just into it. They're enthusiastic. They're not actually defending things like a fanatic would. If I say, but I like the Backstreet Boys the best and NSYNC isn't really that good, and I start going on about it, I'm a fanatic, and I'm going to argue with somebody who says, you know what, I didn't really like their second album. Can you imagine how a fanatic will respond to that? It could be a deal.
It's all based in fear, right? You're saying it's all based in fear and insecurity.
There's an interest in social approval. So if I say the Backstreet Boys are the best band ever, and a good friend of mine says, I didn't really like their second album. Friendship over. Red alert, green alert, yellow alert, whatever. Like, it's a problem, right? Because I'm a fanatic, and they questioned that their second album wasn't the best. What? Come on. I know the best political party. I know the best diet. I know the best religion. I know the best boy band. I know. What do you mean their second album? What? Huh?
You're talking about a spiritually enlightened person, clearly. That's spiritual enlightenment, fanaticism.
Well, some people would say so, but that's what we're setting up a contrast, right? So that's one way that people talk is I've already got heaven. I'm already saved. And their attitude, their voice is condescending, or maybe Shelley mentioned the word arrogant earlier, and that's where you tend to find more arrogance, is at that stage of fanaticism. Questions or comments?
That just goes against me. I can never be like that. You know what I mean?
I'm glad that I was never like that myself. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I probably still find moments to be like that. So, well, all right, yeah, that's my comment.
And 5 years later, I was defending the Backstreet Boys as the best group ever, and their second album was really good. 5 years later, what do I have to say about the Backstreet Boys? Well, I don't like Marky Mark since he or I don't know who was in the Backstreet Boys, but
he was, but he was a new kid on the block. Anyway, Fleetwood Mac. I mean, yeah. Stevie Nicks. Let's talk about that.
What about her?
I was a big fan, big fanatic.
Oh, you were a fan of the... Okay. So, yeah. And 5 years later, you might still be a huge fan. But 5 years later, you might be well, I'm not a fanatic anymore. Yeah, I like them, but you know what I really am into now? Horses. Or, robotics. I'm into robotics because I'm really, interested in it. It's a new field for my enthusiasm and my intelligence. And I'm not that into boy bands anymore. The 12-year-old girl is 17. Well, maybe she's still into boy bands, but now she also likes Madonna. And she also likes horses and horseback riding. And she also likes, I really kind of like my friend, my friend Bob that's in my history class. I really like Bob a lot. And she's not as big into Bob asked me out to see Aerosmith, or he asked me out to see John Mayer. Do you like John Mayer? No, but I like Bob. Do you like Aerosmith? Never heard their album, but I like Bob a lot. So they're not a fanatic for music even to the extent that they might have been. So it changes, and people can be fans and fanatics, and we can relate to these things, and we can witness them without any experience of familiarity, and we can witness them with experience of familiarity. We can also witness them and feel like threat, like I need people to agree with me, or I want to tell people that they're a perfectionist, and they don't need to always argue about every detail about I keep saying Beastie Boys, the Backstreet Boys. I keep thinking Beastie Boys. They don't need to argue that the second album from the Beastie Boys was really great. Look, some people like it, some don't. Some are fanatics about it. You don't have to stop being friends with somebody because they like New Kids on the Block better than NSYNC. That is okay. You might tend to have the same friendships with people who have the exact same preferences and favorites, but a different boy band isn't a deal breaker for your girlfriend or your cousin, or I mean to say a girl's own friend that's also a female. It's not that big a deal. At some point it might be a big deal. At other cases it's not. But other kinds of fanaticism, I want Hillary Clinton to be the Democratic nominee. No. She's a slut, and I want Barack Obama to be. Oh no, Barack Obama, he's soft on terrorism, and and people can get into intense arguments about other kinds of fanaticism, typically when they're not 12. But honestly, it's funny to hear like little kids talk about politics, because some of them are definitely already practicing fanaticism. If you've seen there are clips on YouTube of this kind of thing. And you can imagine small groups of extremists. A child raised amongst extremists is by age 12 going to tend to be an extremist, right?
Yeah, what's the difference between an American and an extremist? A child at the age of 12 that's raised in a typical public school situation. What's the difference in an American child? I mean, they already are taught fanaticism. They're taught guilt and shame, right? No?
Okay, so a 12-year-old American child who's in public schools is taught guilt and shame and fanaticism. What?
Religion, churches as well.
And churches? Okay, so churches, that's more like obvious to the average person that that's the case. What's an example of a 12-year-old's fanaticism? Relating to what you said.
Well, they are in civics class. Usually their fanaticism is probably not based around any kind of political or any kind of that nonsense. You're probably right.
Well, I'm asking just for you to be more specific, because a 12-year-old child that's raised in the United States and has been in schools here for 7 years, they're now 12, would that be like 7th grade? And you ask them, what's the best country in the world?
It's going to be America.
Okay. No.
America, is all most of what they've heard about at that point.
Right, they've heard about it most. So, if
I mean, they might have heard of other countries and other cultures, but very little.
And probably how they've heard about the U.S. in public schools in terms of how they've been trained or programmed to relate to the U.S. is to relate to it as a great, powerful, awesome government or nation or country or whatever, right? So you ask them now, an example of possible fanaticism, what is the reason that the United States is the best country in the world. Oh, yeah, everybody knows that they're the best country in the world. But why? What about the U.S. is so awesome?
Because they take care of all countries. They care about peace and jail. They have the heart to bomb and kill women and children. No, sorry. No, they have the heart to help other countries that need it.
They are so loving. They love each other, and they love the rest of the world. I wasn't actually thinking that was a great answer, honestly, in terms of what an average 12-year-old would say, but that is a funny answer, and it's close enough. So,
sorry.
No.
They were taught that we are the big brother, and we take care of other countries.
That's true.
Not for their best interest, of course. There's no imperialism. That would be ridiculous at a 12-year-old age. So, yeah, no, I'm a little bit funny.
Right. Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, when I think back to being 12, I might have said the U.S. gives, charity to other countries. We do foreign aid, we give loans, we have people from other countries come to the U.S. and we train them in how to, we train them in all sorts of things. We train them in our population control programs. We train them in food distribution. We give them free food, and then we train them in medicine. We'll have like doctors from some other country or medical specialists from some other country. We give them scholarships or whatever. Maybe we help them to go and do the really, wonderful things. When they go back home to their country, they can give, the latest medications and the latest pharmaceutical breakthroughs they can give to all the people in their country who really need it. So we're just so generous, That still wouldn't be my number one answer if this was like, what's that called? The Family Feud, and we were like, survey says. I still wouldn't give that as the number one reason that Americans are the best country in the world. And I know that wasn't a very good grammar, but anyway.
That'd be number 3, though, at least.
Okay, it'd be on the board, right? So,
Yeah.
Shelly, what do you think would be like, go for the steal, Shelly. What would be the number one answer that the survey respondents gave? Why is the U.S. the best country in the world? And you're a 12-year-old public school student's answer, typically. What would it be?
Oh, gosh. Opportunity?
Opportunity? I don't think a 12-year-old would say that, but okay.
Well,
Vanessa?
money.
Freedom! Come on,
Freedom.
people! Freedom's the number one thing.
And I'm the foreigner.
And she's not even from the U.S., right? But everybody knows, that a lot, kids know this. We have democracy. We have a political system that allows for people to be so free and to voice their opinion, and our freedom. Other countries are jealous of our freedom,
and they think you're the only country.
and
Republic, not a democracy, hello.
well, yeah, but the 12-year-old doesn't probably say that. But Vanessa was saying that the average U.S. student will think no other country in the world has freedom because they're so unfamiliar with other countries. So they're like that's a reasonable comment.
I
What?
would say the average U.S. citizen.
Okay, she
Citizen,
said the whole
yeah.
12-year-old thing. We can pull that out. The average U.S. citizen doesn't know much about other countries, and the freedoms that various other places, that happen in various
We're
places.
the only country that has democracy.
Yeah, the U.S. is the only country that has democracy, and the only other countries that have democracy have democracy because we are there occupying their nation, like the Philippines. We're still there. It's been 100 years since we invaded, and now they're our territory, and we're not planning to leave. Are you? What? They're our territory. We're not going to leave. During World War II, Japan reinvaded and took back parts of the Philippines from the U.S. But then the U.S. took it back. And we brought back freedom because when the Japanese came to the Philippines, what did they bring? Sushi? I don't know, but it wasn't freedom. It wasn't democracy. It wasn't good stuff. So what the U.S. 12-year-old students' fanaticism would be in regard to politics would typically be, what is so good about our country? is because we promote independent thinking the most and the best. That's my answer that I've been giving lately. And I don't know that 12-year-olds would say that directly, but that's the kind of thing that maybe a adult would say, right?
Wait,
What?
who promotes independent thinking? Certain people, I guess, but like, where do you get that? Who promotes independent thinking?
I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying that that's the kind of fanatical statement that a fanatical person would make, that the reason the U.S. is the best country in the world is because it's the only one that really cares about promoting independent thinking. Because we love freedom, and we love baseball, and we love freedom. And we also love freedom. So, and democracy.
We've been programmed to love freedom.
Yeah, we love freedom.
Don't tell us what it is. I'm going to watch the news to make sure that I know what freedom is.
Right, that's the next question. You ask people, what's an example of freedom? If you ask a 12-year-old child, give me an example of what you mean by the best freedoms in the world are in the U.S. The 12-year-old says, the best freedoms in the world are in the U.S. What does a 12-year-old say as an example of that? Do they know what to say about that? I don't know. Freedom, like what contrast do they make? That we freed the slaves. We don't have slavery here anymore. We used to have slavery, and we're such a good country because we freed the slaves.
They also might be aware that we freed the Iraqi people.
We freed the Iraqi people.
Listen, and we freed the Iraqi people. Think?
Yeah, I absolutely think that some kids in the U.S. would have been exposed to that idea over and over and over. So if someone says to them, well, I'm from Iraq and I don't I question that. How much do you know about that? I think the average 12-year-old U.S. Public school student probably would say, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're an idiot. Oh, are you one of the bad Iraqis? I heard about your kind of people. But most Iraqis support the U.S. And that may be true. I don't know. I'm not saying that's false. But the answers that I would expect a child to give that's, like 7th grader or something. Shelley, do you have an idea? What are the great freedoms of the United States? Freedom of... Shelley, anything you want to guess?
Choice.
Freedom of choice in regard to what?
Choice.
In regard to what? Freedom.
Politics, voting.
Freedom of choice because they get to vote.
Religion.
Freedom of religion would be one of the.
You're breaking up. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So freedom of religion would be one of the common answers. Shelley said freedom of choice in relation to voting, right? Shelley.
Yes, I did say that.
Yeah, and feel free to hang up and
Like
redial
voting
me
for
if you.
president or.
We get to vote for president.
Yeah,
Also,
might be.
we have all of our freedoms. Like if you want to buy an assault rifle in certain states, you can. If you want marijuana in Colorado, you can get it. And because we love freedom in the U.S., right?
If you want marijuana in Pittsburgh, you can get it.
Yeah, it's you might go to jail, but yeah, you can get it. Yeah. Freedom of speech is another common answer. Separation of church and state. Freedom of religion. That's why the U.S. is the best country in the world. We have freedom of speech, separation of church and state. Freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, right to bear arms. So those are the kind of things that people say.
Facebook.
Freedom to... What on Facebook?
Be a dickhead on Facebook.
Freedom to... We invented Facebook. We have the freedom to use Facebook. We've got... You know what? We've got public libraries have computers in them in the U.S. 75 countries in the world don't even have public libraries at all. And 120 countries that do have public libraries don't have Facebook access and computer internet access in their public libraries for every single school student. We've got literacy rates in the 200% range in the U.S. Our math proficiency skills are like, 60% of U.S. students are above average. And I don't mean above average relative to the world. I mean relative to the rest of the U.S. So that's pretty impressive, right?
Yes, it's very important that we're all 50% above average compared to the rest of the U.S.
Yeah, you know what? That's the thing. That's why U.S. is the best place ever. When I watch TV and I look at all the people on TV, which are all the people that I know best as all the actors on the fictitious TV shows,
You're so logical. You're so logical.
93% of the people that I see on TV are above average. So that's pretty impressive. And they're all American. They're all from the U.S., of course, right? Even the ones that aren't from the U.S., they come to the U.S. because our country is the best ever. It's above average at least, right? So it's not just above average though. The U.S. is the best country ever, and it will always be the best country ever. And it's above average in the following 200 different categories, which are the most important categories ever, because that's what I learned in 7th grade civics classes, right? And it's on TV. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, but our flag is really, really cool because it's red, white, and blue, which are the best colors. You guys don't know this, but other countries have other colors on their flags, and red, white, and blue are the best ever. And that's why the U.S. is the best country ever and will be forever. And I don't know what England like. I mean, I heard that they had red, white, and blue on their flag, but you know what I think? They copied us.
And I say down with India, right away. First country I'm going to go down with is India.
India? Okay. Do you have an explanation for... Do you care to offer an explanation of that? You know what? It's because
Bad joke.
the people in India, I'll tell you what I don't like about the Indians. First of all, they came over to the U.S. in like the 1500s, so when we got here, they were already here. Okay, that's really, I mean, look, this is our country. They were like trespassing, okay? Second, they want to run all of the convenience stores. And I like convenience stores. And I don't want to work there or anything, but I like them. I like to go into them, and it's just offensive that all these Indians use them. Plus, Indians, I've heard that some of them are like into spirituality in the New Age, and that's the work of the devil. Hello? It's a threat to my community. Okay? So we have different kinds of fanaticism. Obviously, my kind of fanaticism is the best. I think that goes without saying. Any kind of fanaticism that I ever had, at the time that I had it, that kind of fanaticism was the best. So we're talking about an extreme form of sincerity. But we're also starting to get into the silliness of some of the actual presumptions and statements, the ignorance and naivety of it, the potential argumentativeness. Even somebody whose favorite band's second album is questioned. Look, I mean, I'm not going to go up to a 3-year-old who loves Barney and say, you know what? The TV show you saw about Barney coming down your chimney and giving you presents? It's actually fiction. Barney is a dude dressed up in a Barney outfit. When you go to Disney World and there's a Barney character there, it's not the real Barney. It's just some dude in that same costume. It's the same costume, but it's not the same dude. Okay? Barney's not even a real dinosaur. It's just a dude. And the Christmas presents that Barney gave you, it said, "Love Barney. I gave you, a big Barney pajamas." That wasn't really from Barney. So a fanatic, a 3-year-old, what's that going to do? If I interact with the fanatic in a way that is like really unfamiliar to them, what's the typical reaction?
A tantrum.
A tantrum, distress. They're crying. They don't want to talk to me anymore because I'm like disturbing them. I'm disturbing their fanaticism. I'm disturbing their cognitive learning process. Like I'm overwhelming them with way too much, way too complex things. What do you mean Barney isn't real? What do you mean Barney's not going to come down my chimney? What do you mean that the Barney that I have a picture with from last weekend isn't the real Barney and it's a different Barney? What? And then, if you question somebody's insistence that saturated fat is the most dangerous thing ever, or their insistence that mercury vaccines with lots of mercury in them are the most dangerous thing ever. Any kind of fanaticism, whether it's holistic, alternative, new age, quote-unquote enlightened fanaticism, or mainstream fanaticism that says, anything that, if a doctor, if an MD says it, then it must be true. I saw some stuff today. I actually found a comment on the internet from somebody saying that chiropractic is a form of, charlatan, like fake medicine, that it has no benefit to, it's never had any benefit to anyone. They didn't say it this way, but it's kind of implication they made, that they were just saying, that's not real physicians. Those are chiropractors. They're not real physicians. They don't even prescribe, drugs or do surgery. I mean, I know that the doctor that I go to doesn't do surgery, but at least they're on the team of the hospital and somebody else in that same hospital does surgery. So if the nurse at the hospital where people do surgery says to me, I'm a nurse and you should take low-fat pills to reduce your body's fat metabolism and the blah, 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 blah. Well, then they must be respected because they're a nurse. So that is a kind of fanaticism. It's not necessary that the average 12-year-old is going to argue in defense of what the nurse told them to do, but that's certainly possible. What do you mean you want me to research blah, 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 or go get a second opinion? The average 12-year-old, I would say, at least in the U.S., isn't likely to go on the internet and question, is the UN's involvement in U.S. politics a good thing? If they're told it's a good thing over and over, they're probably not going to question it. However, I actually saw a video where probably a 12-year-old is commenting on, I don't like that the U.S. wants to do gun control, and I don't like that such and such politician is so corrupt, and I don't like blah, blah, blah. And you do see occasionally, or you can find it, where you have really young people taking a pretty wide variety of fanatical positions and putting it out there. And what are they interested in? They want to connect with other people. That's totally legitimate, and that's a perfectly valid method of attempting to sort out how can I really connect with people that are like me. And if there's 300 people that I know and I want to repel 80% of them so I can get down to the 15 people that I'm going to be friends with, then let's say I'm a radical Christian. I don't drink any alcohol. I support the following political candidate. My diet is restricted in the following 23 ways, and you have to also like the Backstreet Boys. And if you can check off all those things, then I want to be your friend. And if not, you don't matter to me, and your opinion doesn't matter. Or if you're my friend and you like 4 of those things and then you stop liking one of them, then your opinion doesn't matter because you've betrayed me and you're an idiot. That's the normal kind of cognitive filtering that a person in the fanatic stage could do. They're in heaven. Everybody else is in danger of hell or already in hell. And that's, oddly enough, still an anxious kind of perfectionism, right? They're still wanting to present themselves as having the right choice in music, the right perspective in politics, etc., 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 etc. Does that make sense?
I love you guys.
I love you
guys, and based on what Jared just said, that's my response. Because yes, it makes perfect sense, and that's how all people, or a lot of the people, most of the people I have to deal with in my life have dealt with things. It's very structured. Like, I'm not going to love you if this isn't right or that ain't right, or don't like the right group or the right religion or this or that. Yeah, fuck all that. That's why I love my senseis. Sorry. Shelley, go ahead.
Shelley, you want to say anything?
Well, I can't follow up on that.
Well,
no, No, I agree. I've related
Drink, I'm
to
sorry.
everything you
Too
just
much
said.
to drink. I apologize.
I hear you, Daniel. Shelly, I didn't hear what you've said at the end.
Just, maybe I had too much to drink. I apologize. I was just giving my emotion there. You know.
Well, I got your gratitude. I got your gratitude. I got your apology, and I got your gratitude. You know, and I get the contrast that you experience, where, you know, a variety of people have really restrictive may have really restrictive what the word I'm looking for, like conditions. So somebody needs to meet a lot of conditions in order to be comfortable for them to interact with. That's a real thing, right? Whether you're 12 or 40 or whatever, that's a real experience that a lot of people have. So I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge the contrast and your gratitude as far as you appreciate that Shelly and I and some of the other people that we've talked with and interacted with, even on Facebook, have at least some curiosity around recognizing that fanaticism is something that we may all have experienced, but we may be interested in maturing beyond if we have that still, or just maturing in general, learning in general, whether or not fanaticism is a current issue for us. So, Shelly, you...
Mutualinterest.net, yes.
Mutualinterest.net, thanks for the plug. Shelly, did you want to comment on... you were saying something a minute ago that I didn't quite hear the last thing you said. Did you want to say more?
I was just saying that all of what you're saying is very interesting, and it makes perfect sense. I can see that in action in the world, in the world I live in, for sure.
Yeah. Somebody may have an aunt or an uncle who they think of as being extremely rigid or traditional, right? And if we have a variety of people in our lives, then we're going to notice some of them are more rigid or traditionalist or loyalist. Whatever adjective we use isn't necessarily that important, but some people are relatively open-minded and some people are relatively closed-minded. And in the case of young people and, young people as they grow up, there tends to be kind of a fluctuation between certain kinds of open-mindedness, certain kinds of closed-mindedness, and a certain peer group. It gets really cool to do certain things and really uncool to like, Barney. But it's really cool now to like Spider-Man. And then a few years later, Spider-Man's not that big a deal, but you should like, what you should really like is Guns N' Roses, or you should really like, Nine Inch Nails, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of a more recent band, but I just don't know the recent bands too well. New Direction, I don't know, right? So, One Direction, whatever. So we get that sense of trying to reconnect with Shelly here. That's the sound we hear in the background. Let's see if I can... Okay, we got Shelly back, it looks like. So, So I'm interested in the fluctuations of fanaticism and rigidity and open-mindedness and closed-mindedness and so on. Relaxation. So I'm interested in these things. I'm interested in presumptions. I'm interested in, precision. I can become an enthusiast. I can go back to the level of being just a fan. I don't have to be such a harsh fanatic, and I can be a fan. But I do want to move...
Sarcasm, like the cynicism. Right. At that point when we can, as an adult, as somebody who's been through it and we've experienced it and we've gone through the levels of hell, we can still play the role of a comedian, and no, not even that. Cynicism, right. Those three rules of hell, they can become less serious.
So,
and that's the point where we can rise three levels.
The 7th, 8th, and 9th level is what you mean, right? So,
Yes.
so seriousness is a word you just used. I want to pick up on that. So perfectionism is often characterized by seriousness. Maybe not so much.
I believe so. I mean, it has to be.
Right.
I have to seriously defend this, or I have to play this role, or I have to. Yeah, it is. It's very serious, and I've been there. You know that. I've been there a lot over the last couple of years. I tend not to really go there very much anymore. The seriousness. I might still comment the same way I used to. I might still say some of the same words I used to. I might use the same language. There's much less seriousness involved.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I
You
do.
help me with that, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm sure Sally has too. So there's seriousness, and then we could say lightness or casualness, right, would be a contrast to seriousness. The fanatic stage that we were just talking about, and we're basically done with that one, but it's a stage of really, remarkable seriousness. Because normally a fan of New Kids on the Block or a fan of a certain politician, they don't have the seriousness that a fanatic would have, or so continuing with a degree of seriousness and in that basic background of perfectionism is now, I'm going to just mention really quickly the next 3 stages that I'm calling the stages of hell, where people are more actively condemning, typically, and more actively condemning the skeptic, the critic, and then the cynic. So in counting, those would be 4th, 5th, and 6th stages. I'm going to ask Shelley to say a little bit about all of those stages, or maybe the cynic in particular, whichever one you want to pick. Shelley, are you willing to do that? I'm presuming that Shelley can hear me, but I do see some red lines on my connection strength, so maybe she can't hear me. Speak up, Shelley, if you can hear me. So I'm not hearing anything from Shelley, so I'm gonna go ahead. So I want to connect skeptic to fanatic. So the skeptic starts to be skeptical of something specific that they were fanatic about. So it isn't typically, skepticism doesn't necessarily apply to something like being a fan of the Chicago Bulls sports team, or to being a fan of a particular musician or a type of music. But skepticism could apply to idealisms in the realm of political idealism, religious idealism, even what I call scientific idealism. Like, somebody may learn in school that cholesterol is really bad for you. It's going to damage your body. And fat, oh my gosh, if you eat too much fat, then it's going to cause problems with your health and diseases and stuff like that. So somebody may think of those things and have in the past fanatically defended those ideas, but then may become skeptical of them. And I'm going to focus on science because I think it's just going to be faster, but we know that people can have loyalty towards one political party and then shift their loyalty or simply decrease their loyalty. They can switch parties. It does happen sometimes. Or they can support one candidate at one time and then later no longer support that candidate, right? So skeptic is, I don't think it takes a whole lot to describe what that means, but they're still interested in perfectionism. They're still looking for, well, what is the right way to eat? If they're a fanatic, if they've been a fanatic about diet and then become skeptical, well, then they're kind of like a student. They're wanting to actually get into the science of it and look into alternative ideas and consider alternative ideas. But they're skeptical. They're getting skeptical of some of the mainstream presumptions. That's my general expectation, is that people start to get skeptical of some of the really broad ideas, like the U.S. is the best country in the world because we defend freedom and promote democracy. Someone who's skeptical about that may think, well, we do, I know we do and we should, but that one candidate doesn't. So there's an element of skepticism that is distinct from a 7-year-old at a parade, or maybe a 12-year-old that isn't really informed. So I'm going to keep going here. Daniel, do you have any comment on skepticism?
Well, just to say that it can consume a person, and maybe that's what hell is all about. I mean, they're part of what hell is all about, yes.
Well,
Skepticism, cynicism.
Okay, let's just focus on skepticism in particular for the most part, unless you want to directly connect the others, okay? Like, if you want to say more in particular about how they flow, cool. But the skeptic is in hell because they doubt, they have that sense of the loss of the certainty that they had as a fanatic and even as a fan, of the simplicity they had as a fan. They start to go, well, dang, it looks like science is a little more skeptical than anything the FDA says is, perfect. And
part of the waking up process. It's part of being a rebellion, or a rebel at that point, because we awaken to we're skeptical because we understand that we've been misinformed. We've been misled, at some level. So somebody becomes a skeptic because they understand that they were misled. And at first, that might lead to anger, might lead to frustration. But we can absolutely go beyond that, and we can certainly appreciate why we were misled. We can appreciate how the system works. We can be grateful for the system.
okay.
As well, we get to that point where we're grateful that we are in a system that we can have the freedoms that we do have. But at the same time, we have to see that a skeptic it certainly is waking up to the fact that we're intentionally misled. We're intentionally misled into the storm. And,
Okay.
we need to wake up to that storm of delusion, the storm of misled interpretation.
Okay, I have a question about just one of the phrases you just said. Did you say we need to wake up to that?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Good question. No. Some of us wake up to it and some of us don't, and it doesn't really matter.
Well, if one is in that mode of they start to realize that some of the presumptions that they held or were trained to hold might be false, and then as time goes on, if they even think, wow, some of those presumptions were false. That one politician, I think they lied. And that one, did you see that sporting event where the one team, they intentionally blah, 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 and then they had that one gambling accusation where the Chicago White Sox, they threw the game for the, gambling fraud, whatever that was called. So they start to have a sense of the complexity of the world, and there's a loss of a simple certainty, like the idea that things are really simple. And if you just
There's a loss of curiosity. The 1919 Black Sox is what you're talking about. The Black Sox.
The so-called Black Sox, exactly.
No, but there's a loss of that curiosity, that wonder, because they get caught up in the mode of questioning what they've already heard. So they're already into their mind. They're in the delusion of heard this, I'm going to question that. They've already lost the certainty of wonder and curiosity in the moment.
Okay.
At that point.
So they've actually felt like they have a sense that they've been betrayed or burned, or that they were naive, and they may have a curiosity for finding where I may still be inaccurate or imprecise or ineffective in my presumptions. There's a loss of trust, a particular authority they might lose trust for, or a particular group of authorities, so seeming authorities. The other thing I want to come back to is the word need and how Daniel said it. The skeptic who needs to mature further needs to mature further if they want to move beyond the experience of what I'm calling hell, then they have to actually mature further. So I think that's how you meant we need to go beyond that, or whatever it was that you said. I think you meant it in an accurate way. You just didn't state the whole set of presumptions that the context wasn't clear of how you were speaking. But I think what you said was, how people experience it and how people talk about it. That's what we say. We need to go beyond that,
Yes, and it's how we relate to other people's language, and then how we become so attached to people's language, because we're in the three stages of hell, as you have labeled them. If we're in that, then yes, we certainly have some of their own language, but we attach to other people's language, hoping that it will bring us to the three levels of heaven, or whatever. Yeah, I think that was how you approached it earlier. But
Well,
yes, we certainly, can depend on other people's language, which is absurd. I know, actually, in a sense, it's absurd, because it's as simple as just seeing things differently from my perspective. It doesn't really depend on other people or other literature or Jesus or whatever. Jesus saved me, or Jeff saved me. I don't know. I doubt it.
So you're bringing up a broader
Yeah,
point.
we can certainly open up to it all once we get past the fanaticism.
Yeah. So we're talking about that stage of skeptic. We're talking about the broadening of curiosity of a skeptic can be skeptical about other people. They could say, well, I'm a fanatic and I'm skeptical about that research study, but I am willing to read it. But I'm skeptical. They're not necessarily ridiculing. They're skeptical, but they're not ridiculing. They can be open. They can know. It's like the skeptic is saying, well, I know I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm skeptical. And that is a more mature stage, but it also, they're exposed to doubt and uncertainty openly. And that's why I think of it as a kind of hell, because they can experience a lot of worry. And wow, if that presumption is inaccurate, if I was misled by that person once and I was misled by them twice, and then they told me that Santa was real, and then they told me that Barney was blah blah blah. What about what they said about Jesus, and what about what they said about Hillary Clinton? And it starts to cascade into an anxious curiosity. There's still curiosity, and there's actually an open-mindedness that arises there sometimes. There's a new open-mindedness, and a new level of complexity can be learned about. So Shelly has been off and on here because we had some internet connection issues with our Skype. But Shelly, I know you've been back with us for a few minutes and might have missed a couple things. Do you want to comment or question on anything?
No, not at this point.
Okay. So moving past the skeptic, the critic. What's the kind of transition or distinction between somebody who's a skeptic and a critic? The first thing I think of is somebody can be a skeptic without opening their mouth. Being a critic, I guess you could do without opening your mouth, but I'm thinking of people who open their mouths, or they paint it on a sign, or they put it in a Facebook post, or they wear a t-shirt about it. Skeptics can be pretty private and pretty mellow. Critics, in many cases, can tend towards condemnation, tantrums. Fun? Yeah, well, a lot of seriousness in some cases.
But,
Critic.
Yeah, they can tend towards they speak to other sects, I guess, don't they? I mean, that's their whole point.
I missed a word. They speak to other what?
Critics probably speak to the cynics, because the ignorant aren't really listening. So the critic is speaking, they're probably speaking to the cynics, or no?
Well, they speak to other critics, right? We all get together and say, I hate Obama, or I am afraid of Obama because of the following 3 reasons. And I don't like...
They're also speaking to Mike Byrne or other cynics. You see what I mean? They're speaking to people who are looking for something. I don't know. I believe they're speaking to the critics as well, but they're also speaking to the cynics who are quiet, who are silent. Like a Mike Byrne, that's the best example I have. I don't know.
Okay, well,
Maybe
there's
you got a better one. An Angela Roby, I really don't know.
I think there's some presumption in what you're saying, and I'm not actually totally familiar with your reference, but I have been skeptical. I have been critical, and like overwhelmingly as a major dynamic in my interactions with other people, in my internal conversation, constantly criticizing myself, or nearly constantly, very consistently criticizing other people, nitpicking. It's not just one thing.
That's funny. To me, that's humor.
Well, it can be done casually and lightly, but it can also be done seriously and, in a real experience of misery. Especially the self-criticism. And you know what? I went to this one sales meeting, and I think that I blew it. And I go over in my head, I said this, and they said that. Oh, and I went out with this one girl this one time, and I totally messed it up. And but I didn't really like her because she liked and sure, she was dumb, and I didn't like and we went out for 3 years, but I didn't like her because I didn't like her the whole time because she was such a she was a vegan, and she was into the Republican Party, and she was into rap music, and those are all. I mean, she was immature. She was so immature, right? So there's that universal criticism theme. So I'm criticizing myself. I'm criticizing other people. I'm criticizing groups of people. Some of the criticism is voiced. Some of it is quiet. Some of it is, we get together, and my other critics that are my best friends and have the same kind of patterns of criticism, we get together and we paint signs and we wear T-shirts and we protest Walmart. And then we go, and a few months later, we go and protest the school district. And then we go and we protest the sheriff department because they did that one case that they shouldn't have done it that way. And then, they misappropriated funds. And they're just in a mode of criticism. And that is a mode that people, as they're maturing, may really develop into, or may really, even get stuck in.
Have fun with it, even.
Well,
it's fun.
You keep bringing up fun. For some people, that can be a light, casual, fun thing. Most people are experiencing some intensity and seriousness, and also self-criticism. So a lot of the obvious activity is criticism of other people. But one of the big issues, as the skeptic would say, well, I've said this thing a lot, and I'm saying it right now, but I realize it's presumptive. I'm not actually sure if it's true. The critic will say things and then say, I forgot to say whatever, and oh my God, did you see that I spelled that one word wrong? But I already hit send on the email, and I hope I don't not get the job because I spelled that word wrong on my, my email reply. And I don't, there's just a sense of, for some people, maybe I'm overestimating this, but I think there's a ton of folks, Facebook and otherwise, that have a lot of anxiety besides patterns of intense criticism where they're really like outbursts and ventings of sincere criticism and reflecting inner uncertainty, an inner insecurity, an inner lack of confidence, and an inner critic. I hate people who lie, but I haven't forgiven myself for the lie that I told when I was 9 years old, when I said that, I like Spider-Man, he's fine. But I really didn't really like Spider-Man. I just said that because I wanted my buddy to like me, and whatever. We can start to recognize as a critic that we've been deceptive, that we've done some of the things that we criticize, but we probably are not yet talking about it much.
No, I think that's how we can joke around about it, because we realize we've been through it. We've been through it. I've been through it, and I can talk about it, and I can joke around about it.
Mm-hmm. So as you keep talking about joking and having fun, just as a reminder, the champion and the fan, they may be having fun. The fanatic typically not having much fun. How I'm using the word skeptic, critic, and cynic, not that much fun. When we get into the stoic
but I think that it can be very sincere. What I'm trying to say, once we stop putting sincerity, once we're just acting, there's a point, there is a point where someone like Daniel Fixler can, like, stop being sincere about playing those roles. It can be more insincere. It can be more very obvious. He can be very aware of what he's doing, and it's more fun.
Okay. So
I
you're.
don't know if you understand that.
I totally understand
There
that.
was times where it might have been more sincere, and he might not have been aware of what he was doing, but he can still step back. Once he understands what he's doing, he can still play those roles for whatever reason. So he might think there's a reason, a cause, and he might be lost in, what's fanaticism, I guess. I'm a fan of those roles. Those roles to me make more sense. They make more sense to me, and I feel like most people don't play those roles. They don't play those roles of a skeptic, cynicism. They don't play those roles.
Okay.
How many people play those roles? Not many. Or, excuse me, the ones that usually do are very sincere. How many play them just for fun?
Right. So
My
playfulness.
question, how many of you think play those roles just for fun?
Right. So playfulness and fun is distinct. So I just want to briefly say, skeptic, critic, and cynic. How I'm using those words. That set of stages that I'm calling the 3 stages of hell. There's a high degree of sincerity and seriousness, and generally not playfulness when those modes of activity are being done from the stage of hell as a level of maturity. The next 7th stage, and we'll get back to what the cynic is a little more, but the next 7th stage is just watching and noticing these patterns, and there's awareness of them, but typically not playing in them. And the comic, that 8th stage, that's the stage where I can play fanatic, I can play critic, I can be very light, and I can also still be a stoic. I don't have to be comic, in the sense of making jokes all the time. But there's a tendency to take every possible opportunity to make a joke. Somebody at that comic stage of development is eager and enthusiastic about making jokes. They still may have a background in perfectionism, but they don't have the sincerity. They're actually playful. They're actually out of hell. They're distinctly out of sincerity and the, seriousness. There may be a degree of seriousness, but their seriousness is on the decrease. So,
I hope to be there someday.
you hope to be there someday. Well, you're actually doing a lot of that. Yeah, Shelly's saying you are. You're doing a lot of that in this call. You're jumping ahead to that a lot, which is out of the kind of structure that I had in mind. But it's what's coming up for you as I talk about these other stages is you keep bringing in. It doesn't have to be so serious. It can still be skepticism without seriousness and hell. That's absolutely true, and you're aware of that.
I feel like you have helped me along. And I feel like I'm at that stage. I'm at that stage where I'm mostly having fun, honestly. I mean, I do have moments. I still do have moments where maybe there's some sincerity, but very few, honestly.
And sincerity in some cases we want to, consider as a comic, or as if we're outside of all those realms of perfectionism, we can still use comedy, we can still use skepticism, we can still criticize something, we can still say, hey, this paint job on my car, it is not good, or hey, I asked for this food to be cooked in this way and that's not the right way. I'd like you guys to bring me a new plate of this and do it right next time, okay? And you re-specify what you need. So those kinds of interactions are fine and useful, and we can still have sincerity. We can say, yes, I really did not like, I really didn't like the food that you brought out, waiter. I really didn't like it. Here, let me tell you what I didn't like, and if you could, make this right. We were out, was this last night?
Yeah.
Last night, we went out for a dinner gathering, and we had 8 people there. 2 people ordered a chicken thing, and both of them had problems with their order. So the waiter brought 2 additional orders of chicken, like the exact same thing for those same people. And when I say exact same thing, that's kind of funny because their second plates of chicken also were not good. So maybe the manager came after that and said, pick any dessert you want. We're not going to charge you for the chicken dinners at all, and pick any dessert you want. We'll give your table a free dessert. So we picked fondue, like sampler platter or whatever, so everybody of the 8 could have a little something. And then the guy gave us each $5 in game tokens because it was a restaurant that had an arcade. So 5 times 8 is $40. So they gave us $40 of credit plus a free dessert plus, I'm pretty sure, didn't charge you those 2 people for the chicken dinner.
I'm not sure.
Maybe they did charge them, I'm not sure. But anyway, the waiter asked people, you know, I don't know if we had to tell the waiter or the waiter asked us, but it's not unusual for a waiter to say, hey, how is everything? Can I get you anything else? How is everything? Yeah, you can get me another plate of chicken because this one sucks. And a couple of the guys, like Rob and Robert were the name of the 2 fellas who had the chicken dinner thing. And of the 2 of them, one of them is typically a little more harsh, and one of them is typically a little more casual and like polite, like you might say. But you know, it didn't really matter. They both sincerely answered, these plates did not meet our satisfaction. We'd like another plate. I think they both either directly asked, or by the time
No, I think
they would have asked, the waiter would already offer it. Huh?
Yeah, they were offered.
Yeah, the waiter offered it pretty, you know, presumptively. I will bring you another plate. I am so sorry. So, the issue with sincerity isn't so much sincerity as unexamined sincerity, unrecognized sincerity, tense sincerity, anxious sincerity, presumptive sincerity, where I can be defensive and I want my sincerity is, you could even say, pretentious and anxious, where I'm displaying sincerity like my good intentions are going to get me out of hell or keep me in heaven or something like that. But my experience is that sincerity is not sufficient to be satisfied. I can say to a waiter, I want you guys to bring me another plate, and they can say, the kitchen's closed, I'm sorry, we can't serve that for you. I can give you a credit and you won't have to pay for your meal, but I can't get you another plate of that. Well, I got here when you were open. I want another. Well, actually, I'm sorry, but our chef has gone home. The kitchen is closed. If you would have told me that 40 minutes ago, that would have been fine. But, you know, when I asked you the last 3 times, but, you know, being sincere doesn't necessarily guarantee any particular outcome. It can be a good thing, and it also, sincerity corresponds to fanaticism, cynicism, arrogance. So there are realms of sincerity that are not especially mature. But sincerity isn't a barrier to maturity. It's just a place where people often get caught up or get hung up, get tangled up. If they confuse sincerity for accuracy, if they confuse sincerity for competence, if they confuse sincerity for merit or skill. Shelley, haven't heard from you in a little while. Comments, questions?
No, just that I like your distinction there between the sincere critic and then what Daniel is playfully doing, the comic.
Right, okay. So the critic that's a playful critic, that's not really a critic. He's actually pretending to be a critic.
Right.
And he's not fun. He's not like rigidly a person who's not rigidly a critic all the time, or it maybe is to a degree, but not as much as they used to be. They've probably gone through some cynicism, probably gone through some period of just like, let me just, you know, back off for a minute, maybe even withdraw from a lot of social interaction and relax, and then they can do criticism. I mean, criticism isn't bad. It's useful. People can request criticism. People can say, I'll give you $100 to have you proofread my paper and let me know when I spelled something wrong. Let me know if my pronunciation's wrong. I want to go, when I go to the Olympics next week, I want to know your best criticisms for why my strategy could be better, right? So
Right.
that's not what I mean by the person who's in the stage of hell and perfectionism that I'm calling the critic.
Right.
And that critic tends to have rebellion, animosity, antagonism. They're criticizing particular groups of people. They tend to have a lot of self-criticism that they're not actually powerful with. So if I say I am not satisfied with my ability to play guitar and I don't know that song as well as I should, and I need vocal coaching and I want to take a lesson and I want to postpone my concert because I want to practice more. That's self-criticism, but that's not a perfectionist hell. I can be saying, I want to enjoy my performance. I want my audience to enjoy it. I want to have it go well. I want to sell a lot of albums. I want to get great reviews. That's not perfectionism inherently. It could be, but it could also be being responsible, being accountable, being realistic, being committed,
Having fun.
and also having fun. I don't want to be embarrassed up there. I want to criticize myself now, not in the middle of the show. I don't want the critics panning my performance and saying, never go see that guy because he sucks. I want, if I'm a coach of a team, I want my team to do well. If I'm the trainer for a boxer, I want my client that's my boxer to be well trained. And if he's not well trained, maybe I can reschedule a fight. Those kind of things. Reschedule a match. So the point of one kind of critic is you could even say there's an element of condemnation, and I use the term critic and skeptic and cynic because they're familiar terms from like Greek philosophy and classical philosophy, but it's really the mode of condemnation, the mode of shaming and of internalized shame, fear of the future. That's different from somebody who says, I've done an evaluation, and in my evaluation I really need to work on my backhand in tennis. My forehand's good, my endurance is good, my serve is good, but my backhand I really need work on that. Okay, I'm going to get to work on that. There's no condemnation or shame in it, just a analysis, right? So I want to distinguish all those things. Sincerity is fine, analysis is fine, criticism is fine. Condemnation, my trainer should have told me to work on my backhand. I should have worked on my backhand more, and I feel so horrible, and I've let my wife down, and and I'm gonna do some, I'm gonna go gamble some money now. I'm gonna go shopping for clothes to distract myself from That is a reference to what I'm calling the second stage of hell, and the fifth stage in our conversation here. Again, champion, fan, fanatic, skeptic, critic, and then cynic. So I'm ready to go on to cynic, and I think we've actually covered the other realms pretty well, even touching into what perfection means. So I'll probably make some concluding remarks about perfection, but I do want to take a little time, maybe not a lot, but a little, to talk about cynicism and the stage of a cynical kind of perfectionist hell. Anybody want to comment on how cynic might be distinct from critic and these other ones we've talked about?
Yeah, just a lot of self-doubt. Cynic, obviously, a lot of self-doubt. Now, I've played that role pretty good. I mean, we can play that role good right now.
Okay. How does the cynic relate to people who are in the mode and stage of critic, and how do they relate to their own past of having been in the mode of critic?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
I'm asking you to say, how does a critic, or Shelley can answer this, how does a cynic relate to other people who are critics, or relate to their own history of having been a critic?
Well, there might be more. I mean, a critic is very sincere. A cynic might be more aware of the guilt and shame that's involved in being a critic.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay, so a critic who's really in that stage activity of condemnation is doing it outwardly, and the cynic is aware that there's, I really was condemning people and ideas or whatever when I was in that stage of critic. Is that the kind of thing you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Shelley, what do you think? Anything else?
Well, I think a cynic has, because they're aware of the, like you just said, they're aware of the skeptic and the critical side of things. They now have a level of paranoia associated with other people's intentions or the genuine nature or goodwill of people.
That's a great point. Yeah. Do you get that, Daniel? So the cynic has been wrong. They actually know that other people either could be sincere and just naive, sincere and inaccurate, or other people may actually have bad intentions and be out to condemn based on defending a inaccurate presumption, or for whatever reason, they just have a kind of reservation about the mode of condemnation of the perfectionist critic. Shelley, you want to say more, or is that related?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Shelley?
No more.
Okay, so the kinds of thing the cynic might say about condemnation, well, the world isn't how it should be. The world's horrible. It's not perfect. I wish it was, but it's not. And what's their relation to initiatives for reform?
There's nothing we can do about it.
There's nothing we can do about it, though. I mean, the world isn't how it should be, but there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, maybe next time there's an election, I'll vote for the candidate who's going to save the world. Or maybe if that one client, calls me, then, or maybe if my ex calls me, then I'll apologize to her, but I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to initiate it, right? Because she's really, she's not ready. So a cynic still has presumptions in the background, and there's it is a kind of awareness and alertness and attentiveness. Sometimes condemnation doesn't work. Sometimes reforms do work. Or they do, they get passed, but they aren't very effective, or they produce secondary effects that were unintended, or weren't anticipated. A cynic may say it's not really. Why bother talking to people who are fanatics? Might as well just ridicule them occasionally. Why bother researching, more nutrition? I tried nutrition. I tried 5 different diets. I know there are 703 diets, but I tried 5 of them, and they didn't work for me. There's a massive cloud of disappointment and dismay that typically goes with that kind of cynicism. Even grief. I tried. I had good intentions, and I still do, and people should love me for it, and other people should have good intentions, but they just don't seem to care. They just don't have the ability to, they're just too dumb. What it is they all went to public school in the United States, and they're just, there's no possibility that those people would ever mature. The cynic is like, I'm at the end of the stage. There's no higher stage of maturity than cynic. I'm stuck in hell. The world is how it shouldn't be, and I'm resigned. I'm cynical. There's no method I'm not going to keep looking for new methods. I'm just going to relax. And that, honestly, can be a great advance for them to withdraw a little bit, relax a little bit. I'm not condemning the cynic, but that mode is something that we can distinguish from that hypersensitive critic who's easily triggered. If you ask him, well, what do you think about Hillary Clinton in regard to blah, blah, blah? Oh, the cynic will be, what do you think about Hillary Clinton in regard to blah, blah, blah? Well, I think a lot of things, but why should I even tell you? You don't care. It's not going to make any difference, right? So there's that antagonism. There is an antagonism, but there's a superiority complex and arrogance, condescension. Those are the kind of things that I associate with that 6-stage perfectionist of a bitter cynic. Bitter, resentful, resigned. Anybody else want to comment on that? Vanessa, feel free. Daniel, any comment?
I don't relate to that at all. It's totally foreign to me, so I can have no comment.
Huh? Okay, no problem. Sorry. Go ahead, Shelley. Anything else?
No, nothing to add.
You've never experienced that or seen that in other people, right?
Not even.
Okay,
No,
good.
I don't associate with those people, no.
Yeah, well, why would you? I mean, why even bother, I don't even use that label for people because who cares? I mean, so that gets into the I don't care as distinct from I don't mind. The stoic or the watcher, it's in purgatory. They are not in hell anymore. They're not in those blind stages of heaven. They may not have a sense of real salvation. They're not talking necessarily about salvation much. They're just, more relaxed, more curious. They're actually at that stage of the child in the regard to open-minded. They're not going to chase after heaven. They're not going to condemn and reject and repel stuff as aggressively and reactively, reflexively as we see in the earlier stages. They just watch things. They watch their own thoughts. It's mindfulness, meditation, introspection, going to therapy, going to personal development training programs where you get to start to look at what's the reality of how politics works, what's the reality of communication and how it works, what's the reality of health and nutrition and so on. So they could be an active student. They might not, or they probably are only in regard to certain things. But they're also not necessarily having a lot of fun. They are not out to have fun. They're actually out to... moderation is kind of like one of their key themes. So they're out to observe. And they may have, some complexity and perfectionism in the background. They may say, other people should meditate more. Other people are too focused on the illusory world. Other people are, shouldn't be so caught up in whatever. And they may have that, or other people should, what other people should do is they should stop being a critic and they should, do introspection like I do. So there's a tendency for occasional hypocrisy and irony there, but less so. If they write it down or if something's pointed out to them, they'll go, oh, yeah, you're right, that was ironic. That's kind of funny. Huh, I did just say that. That's weird. So, any other comments on that stage?
No, I'm not familiar.
You're not familiar, he says. Okay. Another sarcastic remark from our resident comic. Shelley, do you have anything to say on stage 7, the Stoic Watcher? The witness?
Do I have anything to say about that?
Yeah, about that stage, how it's distinct from others, anything at all. Comments, questions?
So we're moving on from cynic.
We're past cynic as far as I know.
Okay. The Stoic Watcher, I would say that the difference is they're more relaxed or more curious as to what's going on around them as opposed to judging it.
That reminds me of the idea that they may want to be calm, they want other people to be calm, and they want calm to remain constantly. So they want moderation, and they want it all the time. Right? They're extreme moderates. That's why there's that, I'm still calling them...
moderates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, there's still that element of perfectionism, typically.
Right.
But they're also interested in calm. They're definitely... They're not just skeptical of particular things. They're aware of hysteria and paranoia, and they are interested... You could call them a truth seeker. So I'm kind of interrupting you. You mentioned calm, and I went on a little tangent. Please continue, Shelley.
Oh, no. I was done.
Okay, so any more to say about Stoic Daniel? Okay. So the 8th stage, we may be brief in our comments on this, but the comic stage. Who wants to say something about the comic stage?
Daniel?
I don't know how to be a comic. I'm very stupid. I have no sense of humor. Why are you alluding to me? I don't know. I don't know how to be funny.
Do you know how to make fun of the fact that you don't know how to be funny?
I do all the time.
You make fun of the fact that you don't know how to be funny?
Yeah, that's my joke. I get no respect. Ronnie Dangerfield style, you know?
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never noticed that in you either.
Same here. That's new to me.
You don't notice how I make fun of the fact I can't be funny.
Never noticed it.
Shelley, when you think about Daniel's absence of a sense of humor, do you think that it's funny that he doesn't have a sense of humor?
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious, actually.
I think it's hilarious too,
Yeah.
and I think he's missing out.
He should have a sense of humor, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, one time I told a joke, and he didn't even know it was a joke.
I feel bad for him.
I do too, because, can you imagine what it would be like? I've never experienced this myself, but can you imagine what it would be like if someone told a joke and, you didn't get it, and you thought, then like 10 minutes later you're like, oh, that was a joke, and then you thought, well, they're talking again. Are they making fun of me now? But they weren't. See? That would be, or I'm not sure if they were, then that would be kind of confusing. So one time, what happened was Santa Claus and St. Peter walked into a bar, and Santa said to St. Peter, if you get into heaven, will you give me a chimney for Christmas? And then the bar said, please don't walk into me. You guys are so rude. And, I felt that this joke, which was Daniel's idea, was really a bad idea, and I think that he should apologize. Daniel, what do you have to say about that?
I should apologize for every joke I've ever said.
Thank you. All right. I feel like we can move on from the stage of comic because I can see that you guys aren't going to get it. There's, why bother? You guys aren't going to get that. I think we just, I don't even know why we even do these conversations. Anyway, moving on to out of the realm of perfectionism to the perfect ones. I guess when we started, as I recall, I asked you guys to make a comment about what might be meant by perfection or the perfect ones and the end of perfectionism. And you made some comments, but I didn't actually say a lot about it. Do you guys want to take any stabs at what the ending of perfectionism might mean for the perfect ones now that we've gone through all these other 8 stages and really talked about them? Who would like to say something?
I think it's about respect. It's about using language for respect, because obviously the humor isn't good enough. So, stick with the respect.
Respect
perfectionism.
for
Yeah.
respect for self. Okay.
Yeah.
Respect for, I think Aunt Daniel said language. So respect is kind of like the word reverence, and there's other words we could use that are similar, but that's a pretty interesting point. And when we look back at the other 8 stages, is respect for the other people a fundamental ingredient?
No.
When a comic is making fun of one group in order to enlighten a third group, are they respectful of any of the people?
No.
Maybe, but possibly not. Not inherently. Not just on, not if they're a perfectionist comic. So you can make fun of one group to another group. If I make fun of people who are vegans and I say, I used to be a vegan, and when I was a vegan, here's what I thought. And then, I can say things that are ironic and that are making fun of hysterical, fanatical veganism, but I can do it in a way that is maybe moderately offensive to people who are vegans, but my way of putting it of when I was a raw vegan fanatic who worshipped hysteria and idolatry, I yelled at this one guy who was, I was walking down the street and there was like this restaurant and they were at a table outside of the restaurant because it was nice weather and they were eating a steak. And this one guy was eating a steak, and I was walking by, and I was a raw vegan. So you know what I said to him? I looked at him, and I had my face like this. You know what I'm talking about, how I had this look on my face? You know what I said to him? You're the reason that Jesus was crucified. And then I kept walking. And my raw vegan friends who were with me, they laughed because they knew I was right. And they knew that that guy is the reason that the world needs to be more perfectionist. So that's, and I'm getting into irony. So if I set it up that way, I mean, that definitely is repulsive. When I bring in repulsive energies and I demonstrate repulsion, if there are raw vegan fanatics in the audience, they're going to be, emotionally related or triggered by my commentary. Go ahead, Daniel.
Emotionally
Charged. Yeah. So it's not that they won't be charged. So I'm not doing it out of, but I'm not doing it out of disrespect. I'm actually talking about my past modes of disrespect. And if I did say that to an audience of people that included raw vegan fanatics, I could then follow it up with some kind of apologetic or transitional, like softening comments. So I can make harsh, divisive, intense, emotionally charged comments. But I can also say to them, if anybody, I don't know what I would say, but I can make comments to soften the intensity, right? Or I could even say, does anybody have a comment on that? Or does anybody, has anybody ever said that? Or does anybody think along those lines still? And I could shift back to curiosity and I could reestablish respect as the context and say, I'm inviting anybody that wants to comment on that. Has anybody ever thought, that when they, have everybody ever considered that the dietary choices that other people make have a consequence on the planet and the health of humanity and on, supporting corporate corporations that are deceptive and corrupt? And I can really set up a transition where there's still a context of respect for the same thing that I just made fun of. Okay, comment or question on all that?
No.
So the perfect ones have respect. That's what Daniel was emphasizing. Or they, that's a background, like baseline, like a constant return to that point of reference of respect for self and others, respect for language. There's attentiveness and mindfulness, and I'll talk about language in a moment. Shelley, I want to come back to the general question of the perfect ones. How are they distinct from perfectionists in general? Any comment?
They're at peace. They don't have the same anxiety surrounding them about having the perfect answer, or the right answer, or the right action.
Okay. And how is it that they relate to other people's perfectionism?
Understanding.
Exactly. So other people are at peace or not, and they notice it, and they may support other people, and they may question other people, they may challenge other people, they might even rebuke other people, not necessarily condemn, but it is even possible that they would condemn someone, but they would do it specifically to repel that person or drive them away or whatever. They would not do it to reform. Does that make sense?
Yes.
you will not date my daughter again. If you come back into, if you call her again, I'm going to report you to the blah, blah, blah. Or if you, I don't know, they can make threats. There can be all sorts of things, hypothetically. But they're not making threats to reform the person. And they're also, if they make a threat, they're doing it, because they mean it. They're making it, they're attempting to promote their commitment to their child's well-being or to their, to their own well-being, whatever it may be. So a threat from them is one that they're saying, I want you to respect this boundary. If you're not clear that this is the boundary, I'm just telling you there's a boundary. If you want to find out what you get, if you bring my daughter back past 11 p.m., you will find out if you do it. So I don't think you want to do it. Be here, you be back before 11. By 11 p.m., you be back. You got it? And before the person leaves, they're like, want them to really go, okay, I understand, I'm clear, 11, yes, sir, I will have, we will end the date by 11 and we'll be back at that time. You can count on me for it. And, it's just clarity and it's just respect. And there's actually a setup of respect. And the person who's given a really, kind of harsh discipline or really firm, rigid discipline like that, it may be something that they rebel against. But they will, at some point in their life, they'll probably recognize that person who's setting that boundary, they're not going to back down if I say, oh, you're threatening me. You shouldn't be threatening me. Not going to make a difference. They're not going to, throw tantrums, and they're not going to, they can make counter threats, but if they're not in the mode to actually follow through with counter threats, the counter threats are going to have, the perfect one is attentive to other people. They know people's communication patterns. They know psychological stages. If other people are making a dismissive counter threat or a distracting counter threat or I want to look cool counter threat, they'll know it for what it is, and they'll either call the bluff or press harder or simply ignore it, but they'll see it for what it is. And it's not going to mean nothing to them. They have interests, preferences, and commitments, and they know it. The stoic, in contrast, is more like just trying to relax and get back to sanity and calm and take a breather and some relief from the hell of cynicism and criticism and fanaticism and all that other stuff. Comments or questions? A little bit of a longer pause, and then I will proceed if nobody says anything. How do the perfect ones describe world history in one word or in a few words? As distinct from perfectionists, we could say, how do perfectionists describe world history? What's that?
I'm sorry?
Repeat that, please.
I said non-existent, but what?
So, I'm not clear on what you said non-existent, but who says non-existent? The perfect ones say that history is non-existent?
Or just not relevant, maybe?
I like that answer better, right.
Yeah, I was going to say unimportant.
No particular interpretation of history has any fundamental, absolute sanctity or sacredness to them, or if they say that, there's no sincerity with it. They can make jokes or they can even present that, but it wouldn't be their actual experience. There wouldn't be any anxiety about establishing that a particular interpretation of the events of 9/11 and 2001 were this way or that way. The events of Pearl Harbor were this way or that way. Or JFK wasn't, the assassination of JFK, the Civil War, the Spanish Inquisition. They can comment on the things or they might not, but it isn't that important to them in a fundamental way, most likely. If they're a history teacher, if they're writing a book on it, they might be super interested in it. But they're also interested in knowing the facts as distinct from how they communicate about the facts, including with attention to who their audience is. And, So that's their orientation on world history. What's their orientation on their own personal history? They're 60 years old. They're looking back at their life. What do they say about their life as a general, kind of a summary comment?
A learning experience?
It's all been a learning experience. The only way for me to get to exactly where I've got right now and to have exactly the experience I have right now and to have had all the experiences that I had exactly how I had them on the way here has been to have the exact sequence of experiences that I actually had on the way to this one. And the ones that I'm going to have in the future, how does the perfect one, unless you guys have a question on what I just said, how does the perfect one relate to the future? How is the future going to be?
I'm very curious. I wonder how it's going to be. Why don't you tell me?
You want me to tell you?
No, that was actually sarcasm. Yes. The perfect one would be very curious and very wonder.
Yeah.
Wonder, or she would wonder.
There could be...
What's going to be?
Superstition, is my favorite song by Stevie Wonder. And since Daniel brought that up, I'm trying to remember the lyrics of it to try and make a little joke there. But anyway, yeah, didn't come back to mind. But so I'm open to the future. However the future is going to be is perfect. We'll find out. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. There's a kind of faith that's very relaxed and not focused on a particular method or a particular outcome. I have a preference for blah, blah, blah. I have a commitment to blah, blah, blah. I have a plan to go to Jamaica on the 29th of the month. And, I don't know how that's going to work out. I might need to, actually, you know what? I'm thinking I might need to cancel that. There might be a conflict, or there might be a change of plans. Those aren't big deals necessarily. There could be a background of relaxation, respect. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? The perfect one also can operate from that mode of what do we as a family, or we as a couple, or we as a nation need to do. And they can use those words without the distress that other people might use those same words. And really as an exploration, what do we need to do? They're asking, it's an exploration, then they do experimentation. Let's try this, let's see, or let's consider that. Let's do a research study to see, well, what if we reduced the intake of carbohydrates for our high school athletes and increased their intake of coconut oil? Let's do an experiment with one school in the district and see how those athletes do for 3 months, and then maybe we'll train the whole Olympic team, or we'll train the whole district, and we'll change the rules for the cafeteria food or whatever. They propose stuff, and if people don't follow through with the proposals or don't accept the proposals, they might make other proposals at a later time. It's not... they experience the future as a sequence of opportunities. Another set of learning opportunities. Learning process continues. Let's move on to how they relate to, unless you guys have a major question or comment, how do they relate to other people? I'm going to let you guys give a little input here, if you would, please.
Teachers.
Say more. How do you mean?
People, you can learn from other people, or you can other people's experiences and see how they relate. Connections, support, I guess.
Okay, so they're looking at other people as contributors, as resources, as possible teachers, possible sources of lessons, even unintentional teachers, right?
It's resonating. Unintentional teachers, sometimes that's some of the best.
Yeah.
It resonates with us,
So they're interested sometimes in identifying a particular other person's stage or what somebody else really thinks. They might be really curious. even intrigued or fascinated or committed to learning about what's really going on for my child, or what's really going on for my husband, or what's really going on for my grandma, or whatever it may be. Not that other people can't have that sincere experience, but the perfect one has that in general for almost anyone in their life, potentially, and then they have their various preferences and priorities and act on them. So there's a congruence and a attentiveness or mindfulness to their own preferences and priorities, and also they may seek out particular kinds of opportunities or particular people for lessons and for opportunities and for teaching and training and experimentation and exploring, and they may also have a priority at a particular time to go into a reclusion or seclusion or withdrawal for some specific period of time or an indefinite period of time. Both of those are possible. So how they relate to other people in a word would be, they relate to other people as already perfect, themselves already perfect, the past already perfect, the present already perfect, the future already perfect. God's will is whatever actually happens. If somebody says, you know what, I think that there's chaos in the universe and the world's really imperfect, and I just wish that the world was different than how it is. What might a perfect one say to that person if that's their child, for instance? What would a perfect one say?
There's no better moment than this one, my friend.
Okay. What might the person say to somebody who's still in that mode of kind of expressing a disappointment? Shelley, do you want to comment?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so so there's a perfect one, and they're talking with their child who's still in a mode of perfectionism. The perfect one notices that, is interested in that. That's their presumption. They're also open to refining, reevaluating, whatever. But they notice that their child says, you know what, I'm so scared about global warming, and I'm so scared about the upcoming election. I'm so scared about my piano recital, and I just wish that the world wasn't the way it was. I wish the world was different. I wish the world was perfect, but it's not. It's imperfect. I hate my third period teacher, and and there's, so the other person is talking and they're, venting. And what does the other person do? What does the perfect one do? What does the perfect one say?
I don't know. I'd say just listen.
They might just listen.
Yeah.
Anything
I would
else?
just listen and support, I guess.
Tell me more.
Understand.
What do you mean by support? Like how? What would they say? What would they do? Not you could say they would give them support. That counts as what they would do. But more specifically, how would they do it? What would they do? What would they say? A little more precise, please.
I would, maybe I hear you, or...
I hear you. Go on.
I understand what you're saying, or I see your point. I know that can be scary, or I know that can be terrifying, or, just understanding where they're coming from is what I would think
Right.
a perfect
So
one would do.
there's the understanding and the perceptiveness and the openness to understanding, the actual understanding. Somebody could say, so what you're saying is that you really are concerned about the world and your future safety and security, and your piano recital and how well it's going to go, or whatever. I mean, that's how I just said it. Sounds a little weird, but something like that, so they can reflect it back and say, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're really concerned about those things. Is that right? Do you have any more to say about that? I totally get where you're coming from. I used to think the same thing myself. When I was your age, I was really into blah, 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 and I was really scared about nuclear war, and we had these practice sessions where we had to get under our desk because we wanted to know what to do if there was a hurricane or nuclear war. Then you get under your desk to protect yourself from the nuclear explosion. And they may make light of something, like they might make jokes. They might just validate what the other person's saying. They might invite particular kinds of questioning. They might say, honey, that is something that it's really good for you to notice that. You know, it's a really great sign that you notice that. And tomorrow, it's time for you to go to bed now. But tomorrow, let's talk about your upcoming piano recital. And if you need to increase your schedule of practicing for it so that it works out, you're more confident when you have it. Or maybe we need to cancel it. Maybe we need to postpone it. We can talk about that later, though. And I love you so much. Or whatever, right? Those are the kind of things that if we imagine the perfect grandma or the perfect spouse or the perfect client or the perfect employee, we can get into the idea of perfection. Not as something that we should be or that we should have or that other people should be and should have, but as a distinction, as a stage, as a possibility, as an opportunity, and as a point of reference, as a stage of maturity, etc. Comments and questions. Go ahead.
That was great. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Thank you. Daniel? Comments or questions?
Stages of maturity, so I really heard nothing you said. Sorry.
Somebody needs
Okay,
love.
I heard everything you said, and yeah. I have stages of immaturity. I might as well be a 15-year-old boy. There you go.
Okay. So, do you want to comment on any further questions, or not necessarily that we address right now, but are there further questions or subjects you want us to explore further in the future? I'm going to ask Daniel first. Go ahead.
Let's talk about being a good father. I don't know. I mean,
Let's talk about what?
being a good father. I mean, seriously, you met my son. Obviously, I'm a horrible father. Horrible. The worst father ever. We talk about that?
We can talk about that. Let's again. I would say we can save it as a future thing. We can talk about the perfect father. We can talk about our histories as children of fathers. Of course, Shelley has a father, and can talk about grandfathers and her husband as a father. We can also, you and I can talk about our own experience as fathers. And when you say horrible, we can also talk about what we have been disappointed by as a parent or as a father or as a child, in regard to other fathers, whatever, or ourselves as fathers, in your case, in my case, Daniel. What our disappointments have been, what our fears may be currently, what we could talk about. The short answer is yes, and also frustrations that we can experience as a father or as a parent. So we can include Shelley a little bit. Anything else you want to say real quick, Daniel?
I think, yeah, we can talk about that at another time, yes.
Cool. All right. That's great. Shelley, as far as kind of concluding comments, any questions you want to note that you want us to bring up further, or really anything you want to say as we come to the very end here?
No questions as of now that I want to note, but this was a really, really good breakdown. It was really informative.
Awesome. Okay. You're welcome. And so you're open. You're welcome. You're open to talking with us, Daniel and I, about parenting and fatherhood, motherhood, and so on. Shelley?
Certainly.
Okay.
Always.
All right. So I appreciate you guys' interest and encouragement of me to explore these things and talk about these things so that I can learn more and more and develop my skills at communication and my clarity and my understanding and my self-respect. And also I see both of you as people who I can share with you guys my experiences and my challenges. So even if all you do is listen, I'm just like, I can look forward to you hearing what my experience is and getting it and being willing to be with me in my experience. If that's grief, disappointment, frustration, shame, celebration, gratitude, enthusiasm, respect, whatever it may be, I have the sense that you guys are willing to be with my experience and my sharing. So that is not something I take lightly. That's something that I think of as extremely distinctive, rare, valuable. I'd love to have more of my life as far as, 500 people or 250,000 people that I know. Wow, all those people are, really open and able and willing to listen. As far as ability to listen, I'm also clear that you guys are both developing. Like, you came and all along have had willingness, and that the ability continues to develop in different ways for each of you. And I also appreciate your sharing. As we know, just about a week ago, Shelley spoke about her some things in her relationship as a spouse. And then I want to acknowledge you, Daniel, for entrusting me to speak with your son and giving me the opportunity to share with him and learn with him and be with him and have fun.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, JR.
All right. So with that said, we're right on. I think it's 2.5 hours. I don't know. I've lost track of the math. No, it's like, wow, jeez, I totally lost track of time. It's really, we went. Let's see. Yeah, 4.5.
4 hours.
Oops. Fair enough. Well, that might explain why my wife went to bed a little while ago. But anyway, great talking with you guys. I did have a lot of this recorded, so we'll may be able to share that further and listen to it again if you'd like to. And I'm not going to ask for us to set a time that we're going to talk again right now, but maybe we'll talk next Sunday, same time. We'll come back to that later. Unless anybody wants to make a quick comment, if you know that you have a restricted schedule, July 4th coming up. I don't know what day of the week that is, but anybody want to make a comment on our next conference call? Go ahead.